Hi, hope all is well with you all. I wish that we were here in person, but it seemed like it would be better for us to make the recording with just me because when we're all together, the bandwidth is such that it makes it hard to show the great videos that are such a critical part of this presentation. So looking forward to spending this next maybe 45 minutes with you talking about the Environmental and Climate Justice Program of the NAACP and all that it has to offer. First, a little bit of history. The Environmental and Climate Justice Program started in 2009. It started as a result of a set of conversations and realizations that happened. First, our then President and CEO, Benjamin Jealous, was a part of the Commission to Engage African Americans on Climate Change. And there was a realization amongst that group that they needed an organization that was a base building organization to advance this engagement goal. And secondly, we signed a memorandum of, we did a joint resolution with the National Wildlife Federation on the disproportionate impact of climate change on African American communities and also on protection and defense of the Clean Air Act. And so from there, the rest is history. We started off with a focus on coal, which evolved into wanting to add the alternative to coal, which is energy efficiency and clean energy, and then also recognizing that the impacts were already being felt of climate change on our communities. And so we added a third objective around adaptation so that our communities were prepared to adapt to those impacts. So without further ado, I am going to show a video because culture work and video has been a big part of the program from the very beginning, both doing videos to capture and share the voices and leadership of all of you, our frontline leaders. And then secondly, because whether it's spoken word or a performance, art or otherwise, it's just such a compelling part of storytelling and such a compelling aspect of our very culture. So I'll be starting out with a spoken word artist named Prince E. And let's see, I'll share screen. Hold on, let's get him started. And then I'll share the screen. Oh, no wonder. Sorry about that. A little glitch. Thanks. Okay, here we
go. Dear future generations, I think I speak for the rest of us when I say, sorry. Sorry we left you with our mess of a planet. Sorry that we were too caught up in our own doings to do something. Sorry we listened to people who made excuses to do nothing. I hope you forgive us. We just didn't realize how special the earth was. Like a marriage gone wrong, we didn't know what we had until it was gone. For example, I'm guessing you probably know it as the Amazon desert, right? Well, believe it or not, it was once called the Amazon rainforest, and there were billions of trees there, all of them gorgeous, and... Oh, you don't know much about trees, do you? Well, let me tell you, trees are amazing. I mean, we literally breathe the air they are creating. They clean up our pollution, our carbon. They store and purify water, give us medicine that cures our diseases, food that feeds us, which is why I'm so sorry to tell you that we burn them down, cut them down with brutal machines, horrific, at a rate of 40 football fields every minute. That's 50% of all the trees in the world gone in the last 100 years. Why? For this. And that wouldn't make me so sad if it weren't so many pictures of leaves on it. You know, when I was a child, I read how the Native Americans had such consideration for the planet that they felt responsible for how they left the land for the next 7 generations. Which brings me great sorrow, because most of us today don't even care about tomorrow. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we put profit above people, greed above need, the rule of gold above the golden rule. I'm sorry we use nature as a credit card with no spending limit, overdrafting animals to extinction, stealing your chance to ever see their uniqueness or become friends with them. Sorry we poison the ocean so much that you can't even swim in them. But most of all, I'm sorry about our mindset, 'cause we had the nerve to call this destruction progress. Hey Fox News, if you don't think climate change is a threat, I dare you to interview the thousands of homeless people in Bangladesh. See, while you were in your penthouse nestled, their homes were literally washed away beneath their feet due to rising sea levels. And Sarah Palin, you said that you love the smell of fossil fuels. Well, I urge you to talk to the kids of Beijing who are forced to wear pollution masks just to go to school. See, you can ignore this, but the thing about truth is, it can be denied, not avoided. So I'm sorry, future generations. I'm sorry that our footprint became a sinkhole and not a garden. I'm sorry that we paid so much attention to ISIS and very little to how fast the ice is melting in the Arctic. I'm sorry we doomed you, and I'm sorry we couldn't find another planet in time to move to. You know what? Cut the beat. I'm not sorry. This future, I do not accept it. Because an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We can redirect this. How? Let me suggest that if a farmer sees a tree that is unhealthy, they don't look at the branches to diagnose it, they look at the root. So like that farmer, we must look at the root and not to the branches of government, not to the politicians run by corporations. We are the root, we are the foundation. This generation, it is up to us to take care of this planet. It is our only home. We must globally warm our hearts and change the climate of our souls and realize that we are not apart from nature, we are a part of nature. And to betray nature is to betray us. To save nature is to save us. Because whatever you're fighting for, racism or poverty, feminism, gay rights, or any type of equality, it won't matter in the least. Because if we don't all work together to save the environment, we will be equally extinct. Sorry.
As in the words of Frederick Douglass, without vision, the people perish. And it is true that we must have vision in order to advance the change that we want to see in the world. We also hold that we need to have political education, we need to have research and analysis around policy in order to know how to exact the change that we want. We also recognize that narrative determines so much of what happens. And so we have to command and control the narrative as frontline communities. And we also recognize that localism, being able to have community ownership and control of the systems that provide for the commons, whether it's energy, food, water, are all is critical. We also recognize that in order to exact change, we have to be able to, again, have the vision to see the possibilities. And for us, we help to uplift where there are communities that are fulfilling the vision so that we can inspire other communities to also follow in such pathways, because so much of our existence has been fighting against assaults that it makes the sight line in terms of a vision for communities that are not only surviving but are actually thriving. It makes it a little blurry because it's obscured by the oppression and the systematized ways of making us seem like our possibilities are limited when really they're limitless if we have the vision and if we push for it. So that is the theory of change. Those are the assumptions that we already talked about. And this is what our theory of change looks like kind of in a graphic. It talks about the problems that we're existing under, whether it's racism, poverty, stolen democracy, and then our own focus around pollution and climate change and the strategies, including what we just talked about: visioning, political education, organizing and power building, narrative shift, localized systems, and then advancing transformative policy and practice. We talked about some of the groups that we have specific programming around. We have our Rural Electric Co-op Initiative, our Gender and Climate Justice Initiative, and so forth and so on. And then some of our short-term outcomes are, at the very least, just having policies and regulations around clean air, clean water, healthy food, and so forth. But our long-term access is to actually have kind of quality of all of these basic things that we need for life, as well as community ownership and control, sovereignty and self-determination. So, and the ultimate impact that we want is a living economy that embodies caring, cooperation, regeneration, and deep democracy, thereby uplifting Earth rights and human rights for all. So these are just our program components, which are built around those components of our theory of change. And our vision, core vision, is to advance the leadership of frontline communities to eliminate environmental and climate injustices and ignite an environmental, social, and economic revolution. Our three objectives, as hopefully most of you know, which are to reduce harmful emissions, particularly greenhouse gases, to advance energy efficiency and clean energy policies and practices, and to strengthen community resilience in the context of climate adaptation. So just to give you a sense of some of the details, these are some of the projects and products under each of these objectives. So our Cold-Blooded campaign, which started in 2010, and it seeks to eliminate coal burning in our communities. This is our Cold-Blooded action toolkit, actually. Let me just change that a little bit. But so it's our Cold-Blooded report and action toolkit is what that's supposed to say. But it actually guides us through the whole process of assessing the community's relationship with coal plant, and then helping to move us past coal burning, but not just pushing back coal burning, but advancing energy efficiency, clean energy, and so forth. So another video. So hopefully the transition will be smoother than before. We'll see. Let me stop share and stop. So this is, I'm just going to show you a couple minutes of this just so you see the kind of videos that we create to uplift the voice and leadership of all of you.
Halliburton, and we're here at the State Line Generating Plant in Hammond, Indiana, with some of the members of the Hammond branch of the NAACP. We came out here today to check out this plant because it is a coal burning plant, and it is in our area, in our neighborhoods, and we know that plants like this are being shut down in other places, but the minority areas, these plants continue to function in our area. And we are finding out that there are a lot of health-related illness come from us breathing this air.
As we know, African Americans generally suffer more deeply with these types of illnesses like asthma and those kind of things. And it's just a shame that folks just don't know what's around the corner from that.
You know, we have baseball diamonds in the area. You know, children are playing here now, but this area is not nearly as vibrant as it was when I was growing up. When I was growing up, our family would come and go to the aquarium that's over in this area. We grew up with a very nice aquarium. Families would come out and have picnics. We would have baseball games. it would just be a whole family environment. And again, we never knew about the toxic waste that was coming from the coal plant. Glenville, this is, one of the things about Cleveland is that it's like #1 in poverty in the country. This plant is right in the midst of the Black community. And the fact that no one has made us aware of what's going on. Not our elected officials, not our community leaders. You don't hear anything about it, and it's killing our community.
So you get the idea. It's about, how long is it? It's about 23 minutes long. It's just our frontline communities telling the stories of the impact of coal on communities. So let me go back to the presentation. So when we talk about this, the work that we do, as I said, we always want to kind of to lead with the voice and the experiences of our frontline leadership. And so whether it's the video, or this is a press conference actually in front, where the President Scott S. Dale, the Bridgeport, who's in Connecticut, the Bridgeport branch president and so forth, are all there launching the cold-blooded campaign for the Bridgeport coal plant. This is some of the work that's happening in Indiana, that has happened in Indiana, where they held town hall meetings talking about moving away from coal and moving into energy efficiency and clean energy. Some of their work included, they were instrumental in defeating a House bill that would have pushed back on moving into the clean energy economy. Similarly, in Mississippi, they did work that resulted in the Jack Watson plant stopping burning coal. They were also part of the billboard campaign in the upper left-hand corner, which resulted in the Kemper County coal plant not moving forward. In the bottom right-hand corner, there was a youth delegation from Gulfport, Mississippi, that went to Dallas to testify at the new source performance standards for coal plants EPA hearing. And so the youth went there and were key in testifying against low regulations and towards strong regulations. And in the lower left-hand corner is an image of the Mississippi, the Gulfport communities meeting and planning for all of this work that they're doing around clean air, around disaster equity, around food justice. So that's more about that. And yeah, the EPA hearings. And then this is the image of some of the EPA, actually our first EPA hearing that we did in Chicago, where we went and at the hearing on the mercury and air toxics rule. In the upper left-hand corner is board member Reverend Teresa Deer. In the upper right-hand corner is ECJ committee member Rose Joshua, and then some of our other members there, Darrell Slaughter in the middle left-hand picture, and Ms. Thelma Spencer, who is a school teacher in Chicago, also testifying about the impacts of pollution on children's health and educational attainment. But this is the importance. So often when we go and we're at these EPA hearings, we're the only Black folks in the room way too often. And so this is the real importance of the NAACP's voice of leadership on these issues. One of the campaigns that you would be welcome to be a part of, that we can support you in advancing, is campaigns around clean air or clean water ordinances. We released this report, Fumes Across the Fence Line, about the impact of oil and gas industry on our community's health and well-being. So if you want to advance a campaign around oil and gas, we are here to serve you with that as well. And another video for us.
city of Baytown is made of old money, lower to middle class families and pollution. But if you get a job at a chemical plant, you don't have time to think of a solution. I guess my brother, my uncle, and my cousins are sellouts because they went industrial instead of the drug route. Refinery city lights and pipes run along the Gulf Coast. The smoke boasts with sulfur air. It's a wonder anyone's able to take a breath. We're so used to it, we forget. Soon, the sons and daughters won't be able to drink the water. They say the first priority is the people, but the people are the ones being excluded and uprooted. Just ask Archer Courts, ask George Washington Carver Elementary, or ask the Suburbanites, Exxon Sacrifice, aka Brownwood Neighborhood. God bless social media, but Flint ain't the only case of complexion without protection. Baytown, aka the Dirty Bay, is surrounded by giant toxins, threatening the city in every way. We see the huge still from our window sills, make jokes as we choke. We've been possibly dying from this kind of poison oak. It's no mystery that the Black and brown communities are being targeted. Black lives matter, but not when they're expendable and making money is good for the market. Give them a fine, it's fine. They can afford it. We live with the headaches, the shortness of breath, and watery eyes. They keep building, and we pay for it. Constantly trying to heal ourselves and repel the environmental destruction. Breathe it in, then breathe out.
So, that I thought was a very good analysis of the situation, both in terms of the disproportionate impacts that our communities face, as well as the systemic issues. As she says, Black Lives Matter, but not when when we're basically expendable and making money is good for the market. And that is the very root of our challenge. I mean, our lives only matter to the extent that we are commodities to be bought and traded. And as we know, we came over to this country as cargo, as monetized cargo. And that has been at the root from then until now, when we're the essential labor and only valued for what we are doing on the front lines, risking our lives every day. And so this is, if you notice, the kind of recurrent theme even is the mask that Prince E wore and the masks that these sisters are wearing in the video. And it really even goes to when you hear about when you talk about on the plane that you have to put your mask on before you put the mask on someone else. And we really are in a place where we have to think about what that mask is, figuratively and literally, when we have a toxic society that doesn't have regard for our lives and our demise. So that being said, going backwards, interesting. Okay, yeah. So the work that we're doing now is around advancing youth leadership. As you saw, well, maybe you didn't see it, but anyway, the one of the projects that we launched is this youth community scientist project, which trains youth how to collect their own water air samples and soil samples and analyze them. It also teaches youth how to tell their own story through media training. And then it also teaches youth how to advocate for change through advocacy training. The inaugural project was the East Chicago, Indiana Youth Community Scientist Project. We also had youth leadership in a project to donate water to Flint, Michigan. And this is another initiative we just launched earlier this year called the Transit Equity, Clean Air, Healthy Communities Initiative. And with it, we are working with communities on how to assess transit access and quality, affordability, as well as defining quality not only as quality of ridership and so forth and mobility, but also quality in terms of its intersection with our air quality, because we know that these buses are often belching out some pretty extreme pollution, and that disproportionately impacts our communities and also it contributes to the overall pollution burden that's leading us towards climate change. So we're looking at how to have buses be more healthy, as well as accessible, affordable. So when we talk about our second objective, which is advancing energy efficiency and clean energy, we launched our Power to the People campaign, which includes advancing policies and practices that push back on the bad, whether it's fracking and other types of negative practices, and pushes forward on the good in terms of community-owned solar, local hire provisions, disadvantaged business enterprise provisions, and more. So we're advancing policy change, the ones that I mentioned, and as well as renewable portfolio standards, energy efficiency resource standards, et cetera. And these are some of the places that have launched just energy policy campaigns, including Ohio, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, really way too many to name, which is great. So you're all doing some great work out there. In Missouri, in fact, the Missouri NAACP was credited for the introduction of House Bill 2197, which was around having a mandatory energy efficiency resource standard. That's then State President Mary Radcliffe, still existing St. Louis branch president Adolphus Pruitt in the bottom two pictures. Maryland State Conference has been leading on a lot of great work over the years, from the Maryland Clean Energy Jobs Initiative to the offshore wind bill. That this day was the actual signing of the bill, and that's then President Gerald Stansberry standing at the mic in front of the governor at the time. That's how instrumental the NAACP was seen in the passage of the bill, that it was front and center when the bill was being signed at the press conference and so forth. Also, President Stansberry in the front of the march to ban fracking in Maryland, which was a successful fight. And then to the right there in the black jacket is Brooke Harper, who was leading as our ECJ chair there and led us through many great efforts in Maryland. Similarly, in Portland, the NAACP was front and center on the whole campaign and passage and now implementation of the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund. And out of that leadership, Joanne Hardesty, who was the president at the time when they first got involved and was just a major leader in the coalition, she then went on to really gain a level of notoriety as well as influence and trust, deep trust of the community, that resulted in her successful campaign to become a member of the city council. And now she's the first African-American on the Portland City Council and is doing awesome work. Really, she got in there. She didn't just, her goal wasn't to get in there. Her goal was to get in there and push for change. And that's exactly what she's doing. The Just Energy Policies and Practices Toolkit, sorry, there's little fireworks going on outside, includes all of the ways that we can push for the very things that we talked about, the clean air policies, the demonstration projects, and so forth and so on. So all of that can be found in our Just Energy Policies and Practice Toolkit. If you want to do any of those activities, this is the place to go to give you kind of step-by-step direction on how to do it, as well as, of course, the help of our regional organizers. This is one of the projects that's detailed in there is the demonstration projects that we do, whether it's demonstration projects that we do in terms of energy efficiency projects, clean energy projects, and so forth. So this is one of our initiatives under the Power to the People campaign, the Solar Equity Initiative, which is to provide job skills training in solar, to coordinate the installation of solar on low-income housing, in community centers in low-income communities, and community microgrids. And then we also are pushing for equitable solar policies as well. And that installation was actually on the Genesee Center for Domestic Violence Prevention and Intervention, which is a really exciting, that was our kickoff project. And what was really exciting about it, and as you see, we've got Chairman Russell on the roof and President and CEO Derek Johnson coming up the ladder. What was really exciting about that project, though, was the fact that we had that we did that on this domestic violence prevention and intervention transitional housing, and that the survivors of domestic violence were part of the trained workforce to put the solar panels on their own transitional housing. And the super exciting news is 2 years later, now they are actually employed in the solar industry, because they went from that directly into an apprenticeship and training program, and went from that right into employment in the solar industry. And we all know the financial security is one of the biggest barriers in terms of people staying in abusive relationships, but now they are free of those constraints and are living independently with their kids and able to support themselves fully. Another one of our solar installations that we facilitated with Grid Alternatives with the Compton branch of the NAACP. And then we also have another project we'd love for you to consider being involved in, called the Power Up Employment Project, which is working with formerly incarcerated persons to provide training on energy efficiency and solar installations, and then also going from training to job placement. So that's an exciting one. So if you have a city or municipality or even at the sub-local level that would be interested in doing that, we are here to work with you in doing that. So that's our inaugural Power Up project in Colorado Springs under the great leadership of President Rosemary Harris Lytle, who is the president of the Rocky Mountain Area Conference. And so we also have under the Advancing Energy Efficiency and Clean Energy work, our Democratization of Rural Electric Co-ops project, which is really helping folks who are member owners of rural electric co-ops to know that they're member owners first and foremost, because too many of our communities are part of rural electric co-ops and they just pay their bills just like we pay them to utility companies that are not owned by us, and they don't recognize that not only are they member owners, but that means that allows them certain rights because they own the utility, so they have power and decision making over how they're operated. One challenge with these rural electric co-ops is that they are often, again, even though they're owned by the community is not involved, so they break the rules all the time. And so we find where they've amassed profits over the years, and really every year they're supposed to return those profits to the community, either by lowering rates or by an actual rebate or by some other kind of collectively decided upon use, but they're not supposed to be turning a profit. And they definitely aren't supposed to be using those funds in other ways, which we've seen everything from junkets that they've gone on to otherwise. That's not to say that they all do that, but that's to say that, that they're supposed to be democratically run systems because they're owned by the people who they serve. And that's why we need them to all serve. So we're working on holding them accountable as such. So we held a rural electric co-op convening, both to help communities understand how to educate their community owners, to their member owners, to exert more control over this company that they own, and then also to help rural electric co-ops to know what opportunities there are for them in order to be able to engage in the new energy economy and do more as it relates to energy efficiency and clean energy work. So we also have launched a energy justice certification program. We began to have energy justice trainings in 2016, and now we have a certification program to help folks to move along the path to reach where Joanne Hardesty reached, really. She was one of the same person I told you about in Portland, Oregon. She was one of our inaugural class of the energy justice program in 2016, June of 2016 is our 4-year anniversary, I guess, of launching that initiative. And after she went through that program, she went on to be at the helm of that Portland Clean Energy Fund, and now she's in the city council. And we have other folks, Aswega Gates, who is right here in this picture. He is to the right there, and he also went on to do work in his community and is now also an elected official. We had another person, Lewis Harris, who also went on to do work in his community and is now an elected official in Washington State. Similarly, yeah, well, there's many folks. Another person, Jocelyn Travis, who you actually saw in the video when talking about Cleveland. She went on to be an excellent ECJ chair and did a lot of work over the years that put her in touch with a number of organizations, one of whom is employing her now full time. She's a great leader now in her state and region with the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign. And so the work that folks have done in being involved in this training has really evolved into amazing work, visibility, elected office, jobs, and so forth. So again, just another great reason to do this work in addition to the great ways that it serves the community, first and foremost, as the aim. So another part of this is that we do these summits called Bridging the Gap, Connecting Black Communities to the Green Economy. And the idea of these summits is to really help to showcase the possibilities in the green economy. We know that the solar industry is one of the top 10 growing industries in this country. Their wind turbine technicians is the #1 growing job in this country. And so there are lots of opportunities in the new energy economy because our energy economy in general is a $6 trillion industry. And as we make the shift to clean energy and greater energy efficiency, that is an economy that we can be poised to have ownership, stake, and leadership roles in if we position ourselves now as it's emerging. So our inaugural Bridging the Gap convening was in 2013 in Washington, D.C. as a pre-conference to the Good Jobs, Green Job Conference that used to happen annually and was held by the Blue Green Alliance. We put out this report a couple of years ago called Lights Out in the Cold, Reforming Utility Shutoff Policies If Human Rights Matter, out of response for the concern that we had for folks who were literally paying the price of poverty with their lives. They would get their electricity shut off. They would use candles to light their homes. And we know candle fires are one of the biggest ways that fires happen. And that also another biggest way that fires happen are space heaters. And so people will get their oil and gas cut off and use space heaters, and they've lost their lives as a result and onward. So we really wanted to call out the criminality of that versus this notion of criminalizing poverty by shutting people off from necessary resources. We also Speaking of calling out, called out the fossil fuel industry for the ways that they have manipulated our democracy, manipulated our communities, and so forth. So we put out this report last year, April 1st, called April Fossil Fueled Foolery, an illustrated primer on the top 10 manipulation tactics of the fossil fuel industry. And then just this past January, we saw that same report get another bit of highlighting, thanks to the work and leadership of the Florida NAACP, where the Florida president and the state conference stood behind her in denouncing funding from the fossil fuel industry and said that they weren't going to be pressured, by these companies to do their will, while so that they can receive money from them. It's another video that I will show you.
Our latest problem is the removal of the street lights, which basically put us in the dark.
Wasn't funding in the city, and DTE came in and cut the lights out, which was a tragic thing because, when you deal in the inner city, you deal with a lot of crime. You can't walk up streets at night. So that leaves people open to get robbed.
Took away our quality of life.
I understood that money was owed, and our city being as strapped for, for funds as we are, that's what had to be done. But just like water, we need light too. We need to see, we need to feel secure. If, for whatever reasons, city government cannot make that happen, I believe that the people should be self-sufficient enough to do it for themselves.
It was sort of in response to this situation that Solidarity came to be. We realized that we needed to light the streets, that with solar power we would never pay an electrical bill again. With solar power we could do this in a way that was responsible and safe for the rest of the world. And with solar power we can have the community actually own and plan and develop the street lights.
We need lights. Why complain when you can do it yourself? Instead of waiting for someone to do it or come in and do it, we can do it ourselves at a less cost.
Okay, so that's a bit longer. You should definitely feel free to check that out, but great work that was being done by the Solidarity campaign to advance their own self-determination, sovereignty, and ownership, because once again, this was a situation where they were cut off from the resource of light by a heartless company that was more concerned about its profits, a company where the CEO is making millions of dollars every year, and yet they not only cut off their streetlights, but they even took the street poles away. But this is the power of community leadership and self-determination, that they didn't let that stop them, that they continued on and developed their own source of energy through solar. So it's a beautiful thing. So our third objectives, as I said before, is strengthening community resilience in the context of climate adaptation. So we do everything from providing training and joint strategizing and planning grants in particular for communities that want to do multiple projects all at once. It's comprehensive resilience planning. So it's everything from local food projects to water security to transit equity to stormwater management and onwards, disaster equity. So the idea is for the planning grants is for communities who want to do multiple things, not just a community that just wants to do food justice or just wants to do disaster equity. It's a community that says, okay, we want to really take this on, develop either an eco village or a transition town or an eco district, or but kind of a comprehensive community model. And the planning grant is solely for planning, for either convening folks to have planning sessions, but the outcome of the planning grant is to have a consensus process, which will have involved doing stakeholder engagement with all the different folks who have a stake in a comprehensive community plan, and to make sure that we have as many people, individuals from the community involved in that process as well. So the $5,000 is to help with that, either whether it's paying for food or paying for Zoom in this new COVID reality. But that's the idea. And so we developed, to help to guide some of these processes, we developed a adaptation planning tool that provides a number of indicators for determining if a community is resilient in the context of climate adaptation. We also put out this toolkit about how to actually build a resilient community. So it actually helps in terms of that planning process. It gives some ideas about steps to get there. And we include everything from land use planning to coastal resilience to local food projects. And it's a 500-page document, so there's lots of possibilities. But we also broke it up into individual modules so you can have it in kind of more bite-sized chunks. These are just some of the models: eco villages, eco districts, and so forth. This is some of the work we've done around disaster equity and disaster management. One thing we just released too is our equity in emergency management certification program, where we would walk you through, how many hours is it? 12 hours of initial training for the first tier of the program, which is Disaster Equity Apprentice. It's about 4 hours of online training for the second phase, and then it's multiple action projects that one would have to implement to become a disaster equity practitioner. And then the third is another maybe 3 hours of online training, and then multiple projects to implement to then get the badge of Disaster Equity Guardian. So it's a pretty rigorous and robust project, but on the other side is great benefit for self and for community. So we invite you to be engaged. And that's another place where there's not only the fulfillment of doing the work with your community and really resulting in a much more equity-based disaster resilient community, but secondly, there are a lot of employment and leadership opportunities in the disaster space, sadly, because we are seeing this increase in the frequency and severity of extreme weather events and other types of disasters, including COVID-19. So if one is looking for a career or a second career, this is definitely another option as well. So this is just some of the great planning projects and implementation. So in the upper right-hand corner is planning, and in the lower left-hand corner and the picture on the left, the two pictures on the left in general are both implementation, where the Gulfport project did a lot of planning, and then they developed a multi-site community gardens project, and they had a master gardener who trained all these apprentices in the community, and they are working this land through these raised bed gardens. So it's beautiful. Same here in Florida, Gulfport, Longview, Texas, doing great projects. The Longview project. And then also sometimes we work with communities who are doing projects from scratch, and other times we're working with communities who there might already be a climate action plan in the making, and we just want to make sure that there's equity integrated into it. So we talk about how we do it from scratch, and then how do we do an intervention on an existing plan. This is one of our star ECJ chairs who got in there with the municipality of Anchorage and ended up being the co-chair of their advisory committee for the development of the Anchorage Climate Action Plan. She was there from beginning to ratification, worked on a series of community consultation projects. I was there and sat down with them at one point. We talked about the equity analysis and what needed to be included, including, everything from measures to address homelessness in the plan and otherwise. So because of Bessie, it was a much more equity-based plan, and because of her leadership, we had real community inclusion and leadership. Another toolkit we put out in the Eye of the Storm Action Toolkit. So I talked about the Equity and Emergency Management project or certification program, and this is really kind of the companion guide to being able to implement all the projects and practices that I talked about as part of the certification program. So this is another quick video I'll show you.
My name is 1034444.
I'm about to lose my apartment. I'm about to sell my truck to pay my rent.
You have been denied?
Yes, sir.
You've been denied.
Yes. The BP oil spill has caused a complete economic standstill in our area.
Why can I not talk to the person that's actually got my claim? Why has it taken so long?
I understand the inconsistencies. That's one reason I'm here. It's wrong. It's got to be corrected. But it's not like we're not paying out the money.
So I have so much more to share about that. It's about the whole video is about 21 minutes long, and we'll make sure you have access to this so you can watch it all. But that's just to give you a sample of some of the work that we've done to highlight the experiences of communities and the injustices in the context of that case, the BP oil drilling disaster, post-disaster situation. So we appreciate, again, being able to tell these stories in order to be able to push for change. So we did that video, and it talked about the deep flaws in the Gulf Coast compensation facility. I forgot the exact name of it. And now whether we're looking at the COVID-19 or other disasters, we're able to have documentation in terms of our reports, as well as the storytelling, storytelling videos that really tell the story of the flaws and what we need to do to improve equity-based disaster management. And so we did this, in addition to the certification program that we're doing, we're also encouraging every branch in the nation to have a community emergency response team. And part of that is dealing with, some of these traditional, we had the first day of hurricane season on June 1st. We know that it's wildfire season coming up. We know we're still in the midst of a tornado season. And we also know that COVID-19 was and continues to be a disaster. And it has all of the hallmarks of disaster, from the ways that folks are impacted to who's disproportionately impacted. And this is why we, as the NAACP, are really pushing all of our communities to have CERT teams, so that we know the emergency management system, and we know not only how to be there to make sure our communities are being served, but how do we document the inequities in the system? Because we saw with Hurricane Katrina how inequitable the systems are. So people are traumatized by the disaster, and then our folks are re-traumatized by the failings of our emergency management system. There's a lot of great parts to it and a lot of flaws that it's really only us, in their defense, because we're underrepresented in those systems. How are they going to know how best to serve us? So if we're there to provide that guidance, feedback, critique, and affirmation where necessary, then we can see a much better system that serves all people. So the Florida State Conference was at the forefront in terms of making sure that they had last year before last this training where all of their 57 people from 25 branches were trained as community emergency response teams. And now they were the inaugural group in our equity and emergency management certification program. So they had 300 people sign up, and 90 people made it through passing the FEMA exam, taking and passing the FEMA exam. And we're gonna get the other folks through taking the exam as well. And but the first class was last Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. 90 folks made it through the class, and now I'm going back and checking all of their quizzes and so forth, and hopefully we'll graduate some new equity and emergency management disaster equity apprentices soon, and they'll be moving to the next stage of practitioners. So excited about that. So our sea level rise training and action plan, we have gone around the country and done at least probably 10 to 15 trainings with our partners, Climate Central and NOAA and the Sea Grant program. This is one such training in Honolulu, Hawaii, where that's President Braggs, the president of the Hawaii NAACP, and Kristen Brown, who is a great leader as well from Hawaii. And we are super keen to work with them. And in the bottom, that's Dr. Maxine Burkett. And we're super keen to continue working with them on their response to sea level rise, flooding risk, and otherwise. We have joined this project with Green Muslims of Wisconsin and others to develop a healing justice project. And our role in that project is developing a healing justice toolkit. So this is the beginning of that resource list we put together. And then finally, just as kind of through lines through all of our 3 objectives in programming, we have this intersections document that looks at the intersections between environmental and climate justice and all the NAACP game changers, from health to economics to criminal justice, civic engagement, and so forth. We wrote this article back in 2017, diversity is not enough, and done alone it can be counterproductive. And we're certainly seeing that today, where there's a deeper recognition that we can't just kind of diversify. We have to be explicitly anti-racist in order to begin to root out the deep, systemic, virulent racism in our society. Similarly, we wrote this document to help folks to understand what it looks like to be led by communities and some of the challenges that have sort of surfaced with communities working with big green organizations or others who don't recognize what it's like to be in allyship or what it's like to be led by communities on the front line. So we help to write some tips in this document and continue to do trainings and help folks to understand the ways to work that. And we want to start them young. We wrote this document to work with the National Education Association and others to help teachers to know how to do programming that combines environmental sciences and social studies, because we all know that environmental issues are inextricably connected with social justice, as we know only too well. And again, speaking of youth leadership, we have put together this youth and college organizing toolkit. It really talks about the very same, objectives that we talked about, but how youth can really play a critical leadership role in advancing those efforts and initiatives. And to that end, at the UN climate talks in Paris, we had a youth delegation that went, and we linked up with the HBCU Climate Consortium, and together we did a Black Lives Matter die-in in December of 2015, really acknowledging the moment that we were in as a nation then, which for us isn't just a moment, it's our lives, but a moment of recognition that was happening around the nation and that we've had a resurgence around now. But in this, it was really calling out the intersections between whether it's racial profiling and police brutality, or it's our communities dying a death of 1,000 cuts by the assaults of corporatocracy and its polluting impacts on our communities. It's the same system and same disregard for our lives. And so the youth really made that point clearly and stridently at the UN climate talks there. And so we launched this initiative centering equity in the sustainable building sector. And that really looks at how do we make sure that as these green buildings start to proliferate, these LEED Platinum, LEED Gold, these certified buildings, how do we make sure we, who are most likely to be in the least energy efficient buildings, most likely to be in the least disaster resilient buildings, most likely to be in the sickest buildings, whether it's radon or lead or asbestos, how do we make sure that we are that as these green buildings and sustainable buildings advance, that they aren't another luxury that's afforded by the wealthy few while we continue to languish in these toxic environments? How do we prioritize frontline communities for having healthy environments where we live, work, and play? So we launched that initiative in 2018 in August, and it continues robustly. So we invite you all, again, to be a part of this initiative as well. We have multiple working groups, and we'd love for you to join any of the working groups. We also launched in 2017 the Black Labor Initiative on Just Transition. Again, would invite you to join that as well. And that is literally just as it sounds, pulling together labor, Black labor in particular, who are often both marginalized in the labor front and who aren't necessarily being considered on the environment side, because we have these initiatives like the Blue Green Alliance, and often it's not the African American labor that's involved in those conversations around the intersections of environment and labor. And so we want to make sure that African Americans whose communities are disproportionately negatively impacted by the fossil fuel industry, but who also are still working on in that industry and relying on it for livelihoods. And we all know the economic challenges also disproportionately impact our neighborhoods. So they really sit at the intersection of two tough situations. And so as we advance towards this new energy economy, the question there is, how do we make sure that our African American folks in labor who are also being displaced are in leadership in the new energy economy? So this is a quote from the Black Workers for Justice, Environmental and Climate Justice Working Group. We believe that the fight for safety and survival in our communities and workplaces is an integral part of the struggle for Black liberation, workers' power, and building an economy for people and planet. So another cross-cutting initiative is our global African Descendant Leadership Initiative on Environmental and Climate Justice. And so this is the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance and the NAACP. So you see President CEO Johnson, and that's Mathika Mwenda in front, who is the Executive Secretary of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, and then Augustine Njabanishi, who's also on the executive board of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, otherwise known as PACJA. You see Chairman Russell sitting there, as well as Kathy Eglin, the chair of our committee, back there also. So we're all there signing. We also are doing work around gender justice. We have an upcoming paper coming out on the intersection of gender and climate justice. This is some of our joint work together. We've done some of the UN climate talks. And then finally, just want to introduce you to the team. Jane English, a field manager, Haley Duncan, our research and policy specialist, Tori Griffin, Region 5 and 6 organizer, Denise Abdul Rahman, who's a Region 3 and 4 field organizer, Ethel Sakin-Konye, who is our executive assistant, Danielle Harris, who is our administrative manager, Mandy Lee, who is our Centering Equity in the Sustainable Building Sector manager. On the lower left is Ife Kilimanjaro, who's a consultant working on disaster equity. Lower right is Cynthia Herrera, who is our systems and evaluation manager. And then Kathy Eglin, who is our amazing board committee chair who's been with us since the very beginning and has just been a fantastic, staunch leader. And so, yeah, these are teams I think I talked a little bit about before: administration, operations, popular education and training, field building, resource and raising and management, systems evaluation, research and policy organizing. It's our org chart. And then these teams, just so you kind of, I'm skipping past that because you'll be able to see all of that once you get this presentation. And then just kind of a little bit about some of our partnerships. We get a lot of requests for partnerships, at least 50 per day. And people either want to use our name or get our consultation on things, or, the first and the last are kind of the tough parts. So these are the hard parts of it, the pitfalls, perils, and perdition. But we also, so these are some of the requests that we get. This is just a snapshot of 30 days. I just went through my inbox to kind of do a categorization of all the different requests that we get. Speaking engagements, sign-ons to letters, media requests, internal requests, like I said, conversations to quote unquote pick our brains, to asking us to review documents and make connections, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we have a vetting criteria in terms of level of alignment, ethos, the history of the organization, the extent to which the requested collaboration is in line with our mission, our capacity to respond, the benefit of collaboration to our membership and communities, whether we owe them a favor, so just, being fair. And then if the person's just kind of like not easy to work with, that is definitely admittedly a factor. So I also shared, and you'll get this because obviously you can't read it, but some of our existing partnerships. So I want to make sure you have access to all of those, just who they are, so because our access is your access. So this is just a list of all the different groups. And then those are kind of groups that we're a part of, and these are individual organizations that we have some relationship or another. And so I categorize them by primary, in terms of folks that we work with kind of on a daily, weekly, or at least monthly basis, and then kind of the occasional, more situational relationships. And those are ones that we work with less frequently, but they're there. And so, like I said, many people want from us kind of our perspectives, our equity analysis. So our JEDI input stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So our equity analysis or otherwise is kind of what people want from us the most. But when it all comes together is like work like what we do with the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network is really when we're aligned, when we have a similar ethos, when we're working towards the same direction. That's really when the magic happens. So this is a final video that I want to close us out with, and hope you enjoy this as much as I do.
Dear Matafele Benum, you are a 7-month-old sunrise of gummy smiles. You are bald as an egg and bald as the Buddha. Your thighs that are thunder, shrieks that are lightning, so excited for bananas, hugs, and our morning walks along the lagoon. Dear Matafele Benum, I want to tell you about that lagoon, that lucid, sleepy lagoon lounging against the sunrise. Men say that one day, that lagoon will devour you. They say it will gnaw at the shoreline, chew at the roots of your breadfruit trees, gulp down rows of your seawalls, and crunch through your island's shattered bones. They say you, your daughter, and your granddaughter too, will wander rootless, with only a passport to call home. Dear Matafele Benum, don't cry. Mommy promises you, no one will come and devour you. No greedy whale of a company sharking through political seas, no backwater bullying of businesses with broken morals, no blindfolded bureaucracies gonna push this mother ocean over the edge. No one's drowning, baby. No one's moving. No one's losing their homeland. No one's gonna become a climate change refugee. or should I say, no one else. To the Carteret Islanders of Papua New Guinea and to the Taro Islanders of Fiji, I take this moment to apologize to you. We are drawing the line here. Because baby, we are going to fight. Your mommy, daddy, boo-boo, dimma, your country, and your president too, we will all fight. And even though there are those hidden behind platinum titles who like to pretend that we don't exist, that the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Maldives, and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, and floods of Pakistan, Algeria, and Colombia, and hurricanes, tidal waves, and earthquakes didn't exist, still, there are those who see us. Hands reaching out, fists raising up, banners unfurling, megaphones booming, and we are canoes blocking coal ships. We are the radiance of solar villages. We are the rich, clean soil of the farmer's past. We are petitions blooming from teenage fingertips. We are families biking, recycling, reusing, engineers dreaming, designing, building, artists painting, dancing, writing. We are spreading the word. And there are thousands out on the street, marching with signs, hand in hand, chanting for change now. They're marching for you, baby. They're marching for us. Because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive. Dear Mata Filipino, you are eyes heavy with drowsy weight. So just close those eyes, baby, and sleep in peace. Because we won't let you down. You'll see.
Okay, good. So wrapping up, I wanted to share with you this this form that we're going to send you the link to. Although, I'm trying to think of how we can make sure you're going to get access to this, because so basically it's a form that where you're able to sign up to learn more about this work and how you can get involved, because we want to make sure that we are capturing your interest, and that you are able to access our regional organizers who will support you in doing what you'd like to do. So this is what the form looks like. And so again, we want to make sure you get access to this link. I mean, if you wanted to copy this down, I don't know if you know how to do screen capture, but if you have a PC like mine, if you push the little Windows button in the lower left-hand corner, and then you push the print screen button, if you push the Windows button, hold it down, and then push F8, then you can actually take a picture of this screen and it becomes a screenshot. But otherwise, you could also just literally, if you do surveymonkey.com/R/KV5N as in Nancy 2, N as in Nancy W, then you would have the link to this form that you can sign in, which is our Decade of Transformation and Liberation Forum. And it gives you options to sign up for any of these projects that we talked about, whether it's the CERT campaign or the Equity and Emergency Management Certification Program, or the cold-blooded campaign, or if you wanted to do a fossil fuel campaign or a clean air ordinance. It gives you all of those choices. And you would just, click on the choices that you want, and you would put in all of your unit information, and we would reach back out to you to work with you on that. So, so definitely invite you to check out this link, and also I'll just say that, this doesn't have our email address. Oh, hopefully in the next one. Oh yeah, okay. So this is our social media information, but here is our email address as well. If you just write to that email address and say that you want the link to the form, then that would be good. Or if you want to send an email and say you're interested in your regional organizer reaching out to you, just send an email there and make that request. And we will be glad to go through any of these options with you again and see how you would like to be involved in this work. So definitely reach out because we are super keen to work with you. It's been a pleasure having this one-way conversation with you. But I think if we set this up right, we will start to do a thing where we'll sign on and we'll play the whole video, but then I will be on to do a Q&A with you afterwards, or another one of our team members will do a Q&A with you afterwards. But this again was just so that we can play all of the videos without challenge. So thank you once again. And we look forward to working with you. If we're not already, if we are already, we look forward to deepening that work. And if we're not, we look forward to starting that work. So thank you for listening to it all, and take good care. I'm signing off, I guess. Yeah, sorry, I thought, yeah, that you weren't seeing me that whole time. Anyway, thank you once again, and we'll talk soon. If not now, then soon. Again, ecjp@naacpnet.org if you want us to contact you. Thank you, and take good care. Be blessed.